There comes a moment in every person's life when rejection feels like a collapse, a sudden tearing of the world you thought was secure. You stand there holding the shattered version of yourself, believing something has been taken from you. But the truth is the opposite. Rejection is not a loss, it is an unveiling. It shows you who was never meant to stay, and it shows you the parts of yourself you abandoned long before anyone else did. Rejection hurts because it activates the most ancient fear within us, the fear of not being enough. But listen carefully, the pain you feel is not a verdict on your worth. It is simply a signal that you placed your value in someone else's hands. And now life is giving you the opportunity, maybe even the demand, to take that value back. You are not being punished. You are being redirected toward a version of yourself that you have ignored for far too long. The version that does not beg to be chosen. The version that does not shrink itself to be accepted. The version that knows its worth even when others fail to recognize it. The real transformation begins the moment you stop chasing the people who rejected you and start chasing the person you were meant to become. Instead of asking, "Why didn't they want me?" ask, "What part of myself have I not yet fully stepped into?" Because the goal is not to win someone back. It is to rebuild yourself so deeply, so powerfully, so authentically, that losing you becomes the kind of mistake people remember for the rest of their lives. Rejection breaks the illusion that you need someone else to complete you. It forces you inward, back to the place where your strength has been waiting. When you rise from that place, not with bitterness, not with desperation, but with clarity, you become unstoppable. You become the type of person who no longer chases but attracts. The type of person whose presence is a privilege, not an accident. The type of person who is not easily replaced, because they are built, not found. Your task now is simple, but not easy. Let the rejection refine you, not define you. Build discipline instead of seeking validation. Choose self-respect over temporary affection. Grow so much that the next time life tests you, you don't crumble. You expand, become the person who walks into a room and shifts the atmosphere. Become the person who is so aligned with their purpose that losing you feels like losing a lifetime opportunity. Become what no one wants to lose, not out of fear, but out of undeniable value. Rejection may have wounded you, but it also awakened you. Now rise, not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. Rejection is a redirection, not a verdict on your worth, because life is always moving you toward places and people that match your deeper truth, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. The moment someone rejects you, it's easy to slip into the belief that something is fundamentally wrong with you. You start questioning your value, replaying conversations, comparing yourself to others, searching for flaws to justify the pain. But rejection is rarely about your worth. It is a mirror reflecting misalignment. It's life's precise and often painful way of removing what would have limited you, delayed you, or diminished you. The hurt you feel is not proof of inadequacy, but proof of attachment. You weren't losing a person, opportunity, or path. You were losing an illusion of safety built around something that was never meant to carry your destiny. Every rejection contains a message, and most people miss it because they focus only on the wound. But the message is simple: not this, not here, not with them. It is a rerouting, an invitation to expand beyond where you were settling. You were not denied, you were protected. You were being moved away from people who could not meet you, situations that would have drained you, and versions of yourself that were too small for where you're meant to go. Rejection is uncomfortable because it disrupts the world you created in your mind. You crafted expectations, imagined futures, built emotional investment, and now life has stepped in to say there is something better, something truer, something more aligned. When you understand that rejection is redirection, you stop seeing it as a dead end and begin recognizing it as the beginning of a new path. Instead of clinging to what slipped away, you learn to trust the timing and intelligence of your journey. You start reflecting not on what you lacked, but on what you gained through clarity. You begin to realize that the people who walked away simply made space for those who see you, value you, choose you, and grow with you. You discover that what felt like loss was actually the release of something that was never sustainable. You see how many times you begged for closure when the closure was the rejection itself, and slowly you learn to stand taller, knowing that your worth remains intact, untouched, and unshakable. Rejection didn't diminish you. It redirected you toward the life you were always meant to live. The pain you feel comes from giving someone else authority over your value, because the moment you hand someone the power to define you, your sense of self becomes dependent on their approval, their moods, their choices, and their ability to stay. Most people don't realize they've done this until the person they entrusted with that authority pulls away, disappoints them, or chooses someone else. Then suddenly the ground beneath you feels unstable, as if your worth has been taken with them. But the truth is, they never carried your worth, only your belief about it. When someone's rejection leaves you shattered, it is not because you are unworthy. It is because you placed your identity in fragile hands, expecting them to hold what only you were meant to protect. Pain intensifies when your value becomes externalized. When you rely on someone to validate you, their absence feels like erasure. Their silence turns into self-doubt. Their emotional withdrawal becomes a personal indictment. You interpret their inability to see your worth as proof that it doesn't exist. And this is where the real suffering begins, not in what they did, but in what you told yourself it meant. The human heart aches most when it forgets its own power and looks outward for confirmation of what already lives within. When someone else becomes the judge of your worth, you live in a constant state of emotional negotiation, trying to impress, trying to earn affection, trying to maintain an image you believe they desire. You hide parts of yourself, sacrifice your boundaries, silence your needs, and contort your identity to keep their approval. But no level of self-abandonment ever guarantees permanence. You cannot control how someone feels, chooses, or changes. And when they inevitably shift, as all humans do, you feel the collapse of the identity you built around them. The pain is the realization that you handed over the steering wheel of your self-esteem to someone who was never responsible for driving your life. The moment you reclaim that authority, the pain begins to dissolve. You start to recognize that no one else has the right to determine your worth, no matter how deeply you cared for them or how much you hoped they would choose you. You understand that value is something you embody, not something you borrow. And as you anchor your worth back into yourself, the actions of others lose the power to wound you in the same way. Their approval becomes a gift, not a requirement. Their leaving becomes a transition, not a destruction. And your heart learns, slowly but powerfully, that true peace begins the moment you stop outsourcing your value. Your real power emerges when you stop chasing approval and start building self-respect, because every time you seek validation from someone else, you hand them the blueprint of your identity. You begin adjusting your behavior, your choices, even your dreams, to match what you think will make others accept you. This constant pursuit of approval drains you, leaving you exhausted, insecure, and disconnected from your true self. The more you chase validation, the more you reinforce the belief that you are not enough as you are. You become a version of yourself shaped by fear, fear of being disliked, fear of being abandoned, fear of disappointing others. And in that fear you lose the quiet, steady voice inside that knows exactly who you are and what you deserve. But something powerful happens when you shift from seeking approval to cultivating self-respect. Self-respect is not loud, not performative, and not dependent on external praise. It is built through daily choices, the boundaries you hold, the standards you set, the promises you keep to yourself, and the willingness to walk away from what dishonors you. When you start choosing yourself instead of chasing people, you begin to rise from the inside out. You feel grounded, you feel stable, you feel whole without needing anyone to complete you. Approval becomes optional, not essential. Self-respect transforms your energy. It changes how you speak, how you carry yourself, how you handle conflict, and how you respond to disrespect. People sense it immediately. You no longer attract situations that require you to prove your worth. You attract situations that recognize it. You stop tolerating relationships built on inconsistency, emotional crumbs, or one-sided effort. You no longer settle for being chosen last or loved conditionally, and slowly your world reorganizes itself around your newfound strength. Your real power comes from the inner certainty that you are valuable even when no one is watching, praising, or applauding you. When you stop needing others to approve of your worth, you stop living in reaction to their expectations. You begin to live in alignment with your own truth. This is where confidence becomes unshakable, because it is no longer borrowed. You create a life that reflects who you are, not who others want you to be. And in that life, approval becomes something that flows naturally toward you, precisely because you are no longer chasing it. You are standing firmly in who you are, and that is where real power begins. Growth begins when you ask, what version of myself have I not stepped into yet? Because this question forces you to stop blaming circumstances, people, and disappointments, and instead turn inward toward the untapped potential waiting inside you. Most people move through life repeating the same patterns, reacting from the same wounds, and expecting different outcomes without ever questioning who they need to become to create the life they want. This question disrupts that cycle. It shifts the focus from what happened to you to what is possible for you. It invites you to see yourself not as a finished product, but as an evolving being with layers you haven't explored, strengths you haven't embraced, and courage you haven't activated. When you ask this question honestly, you begin to notice the ways you have been holding yourself back, staying small to avoid judgment, dimming your light to stay comfortable, resisting opportunities because of fear, or clinging to identities built around survival, rather than growth. You realize that the life you desire requires a different version of you, one that thinks differently, chooses differently, and carries themselves with greater intention. Growth isn't about adding more to your life. It's about expanding into the parts of yourself you've avoided. It's about stepping into a mindset that matches the future you want, not the past you've outgrown. This question opens the door to self-awareness. You begin noticing your patterns, where you hesitate, where you settle, where you overextend, where you silence your truth. It becomes clear that the gap between where you are and where you want to be is not filled by external validation or luck. It's filled by the courage to evolve. Every challenge, rejection, or disappointment suddenly looks different. Instead of seeing them as punishments, you recognize them as invitations to level up. You realize that life keeps presenting you with situations that reflect the version of yourself you are clinging to, until you finally rise into the one you are meant to become. And once you step into that new version, more confident, more disciplined, more self-respecting, your world begins to shift. Relationships change, opportunities appear, and your energy becomes a magnet for what aligns with your growth. Everything you've been wanting has been waiting for the version of you who can hold it. Growth begins with that single question because it calls you forward into the life you were always capable of living but never fully claimed. Become a person of undeniable value, someone who cannot be easily replaced, not by performing, pleasing, or proving yourself, but by becoming so grounded in who you are that your presence naturally elevates every space you enter. True value isn't something you chase, it's something you cultivate. It's built through the choices you make when no one is watching, the discipline you hold yourself to, the way you treat others, and the standards you refuse to lower. When you commit to becoming this kind of person, you stop trying to convince people to appreciate you. You simply live in a way that makes your absence louder than your words ever could. Being someone of undeniable value means developing strengths that last. Character, consistency, integrity, emotional maturity, self-awareness, and resilience. It requires doing the inner work that most people avoid. While others remain trapped in cycles of insecurity, comparison, and inconsistency, you rise through commitment to your own growth. You listen to your intuition, you heal what once controlled you, and you stop seeking shortcuts to confidence. You build it brick by brick, day by day, through aligned actions. And as you evolve, you become someone who brings clarity instead of chaos, stability instead of unpredictability, and authenticity instead of pretense. People feel safe around those who know themselves. They feel inspired by those who walk with purpose. They feel drawn to those whose value is rooted in depth rather than performance. This isn't about being perfect, it's about being real. It's about being someone who keeps their word, who stands firm in their boundaries, who communicates honestly, and who shows up fully. These traits are rare, and rarity is what makes someone irreplaceable. You don't become unforgettable by being what everyone else already is. You become unforgettable by embodying qualities most people admire but never master. As you rise in your self-worth, you naturally shift the relationships and environments you attract. You stop tolerating people who take you for granted, because you know your value instinctively. You no longer cling to what doesn't nourish you or fight for places that don't recognize your presence. Instead, you align with people who appreciate your depth, respect your energy, and understand the privilege of being part of your life. To become someone who cannot be easily replaced, you don't demand recognition. You embody excellence. You don't chase validation, you cultivate grace. You don't cling, you contribute. And when you live from this place, your value becomes undeniable, not because people say it, but because it radiates from everything you are. Let rejection refine you, not break you, because every no, every ending, every loss has the potential to shape you into a stronger, clearer, more grounded version of yourself. Rejection feels devastating because it shakes the foundation you were standing on. It interrupts your expectations, rewrites your plans, and forces you to confront truths you may have ignored. But what most people never realize is that rejection is not a destruction of your path. It is a sharpening of it. It strips away illusions, reveals what is unstable, and exposes what needs to evolve. In the moment, it feels like you're being torn down. In reality, you're being rebuilt. When you allow rejection to refine you, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as an active participant in your own growth. You begin to ask different questions, questions that pull you closer to wisdom rather than self-pity. You ask, what is this teaching me? What did I ignore? What can I create from this? Instead of collapsing, you begin to rise with greater clarity. Instead of clinging to what rejected you, you begin to detach from what was never meant to carry your future. You learn to distinguish between what you wanted and what was truly aligned. Rejection becomes a filter that removes what is incapable of meeting your next level. Refinement means learning from the pain, not drowning in it. It means recognizing that the people who left were part of a chapter, not the whole story. It means understanding that sometimes the universe protects you by removing what you were trying to force. The moment you stop interpreting rejection as evidence that you're unworthy, you unlock an entirely new kind of power, the power to rebuild with intention. You stop repeating old patterns, stop choosing from insecurity, and stop chasing what isn't choosing you. Through refinement, you become more emotionally grounded. You gain resilience that cannot be taught through comfort. You become someone who trusts the unfolding of your life, even when it doesn't match your expectations. The pain you once feared becomes the pressure that strengthens you, like fire shaping gold. And as you rise from that fire, you carry a depth, a calm, and a self-assurance that can only come from surviving what you thought would break you. Rejection doesn't define you unless you let it. It can sharpen you into someone wiser, stronger, more aligned, and deeply rooted in your worth. Let it refine you, and watch how your life transforms into something far greater than what you once lost. And so let this be your turning point. Not the moment you collapsed, but the moment you awakened. You don't rise because someone finally chose you. You rise because you finally chose yourself. The rejection that once felt like the end becomes the beginning of a deeper, wiser, more resilient version of you. From this moment forward, walk with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their worth, someone who no longer fears being left, someone who has become too aligned, too grounded, and too whole to be shaken by temporary loss. You are not defined by who walked away. You are defined by who you become after they do. And now you are becoming someone unforgettable, someone unbreakable, someone no one wants to lose.